This is a timeline of my life from birth through my wedding with Mick. All right, so I was born on April 27th, 1966, to Jim and Jane Drinkcord. My brother had already been born, Neil, and he was 3.5 years old when I was born. We lived on the corner of Broadway and Sapphire, where I was brought home from Little Company of Mary Hospital. The house isn't there anymore. Somebody rebuilt it. It was a 3-bedroom with a den and a playroom. The neighborhood had few fences. You could run from one house to the next, right through the middle of the block. I remember playing in the front yard and the backyard by myself and with my brother. I can remember watching my brother go down into the storm drains, and he'll have to tell you about that. My parents built a really cool jungle gym in the backyard out of pipes, and then my mom sewed a cover to go over it. I remember playing in the canoe. We had a really long wooden canoe in the garage, and my dad would drag it out to the front yard, and Neil and I would pretend we were canoeing. I remember watching Snoopy on a TV in the back room while Neil and I held our big Snoopies. I can remember family coming to visit there. My grandma came and lived with us for a summer while my dad went and worked in Tucson, Arizona for that summer. He was gone. I remember my aunts and uncles coming there to visit. We had our dog Pal when we lived there. Pal would wander the neighborhood and go to different doors for treats. When my dad came to visit from Tucson, I can remember being in the backyard by the avocado tree and hearing a little noise and looking at the wall, and there was a little Native American doll standing on this really high wall, probably an 8-foot cinder block wall. And I was so excited to see it, and I knew my dad was there. I had a funny experience in that house. In my bedroom, I had a big brass bed. It was huge. I could barely get up in it. I think I needed a step stool. And I was always having bad dreams at night and going to my parents' room. Usually dreamt about fire and some other things. And anyway, one night I woke up and saw a man standing at the end of my bed, or at least I thought I was awake. And I recognized the man to be Jesus. I don't know how that was because we didn't go to church or anything. And he looked at me and said that he would always be with me. And I felt a lot of peace from that. I don't know what that was all about. I ran to my parents' room and told my mom that Jesus came to my room. I think she thought I was a pretty weird kid. So we lived in that house till I was about 5, and we were going to move to Arizona because my dad had gotten work there, but it fell through. But our house had already been sold, so we found the house on Elvira right around the corner, and we moved there. We walked a lot of the stuff over. Me and my mom walked over all the little things in my red wagon, and we started in our new house. And my brother and I had the back bedroom with the back door in it. It was time for me to start kindergarten, and my mom walked me down the street a block and a half to Patterson School, and I cried. I didn't want to go in. And then they said, oh, just take her home. And so the next day, she walked me down again, and I cried, and then the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And for 2 weeks, my mom walked me to the front door, and I cried and didn't want to go in. And then after 2 weeks, my mom cried. She was so frustrated. And I felt bad for making her cry, and I walked in, and I ended up loving it. It was such a cute little kindergarten room. It's the only thing that's still there. And we had lots of easels and rugs for taking naps on, and it was just really fun. I went to a great grammar school. At that time, it was kindergarten through 6th grade. But I was a sensitive kid, and school was stressful for me most of the time. My mom let me skip a lot of school She felt if my grades were good, I just didn't really need to be there. So we hung out together quite a bit while I skipped school. One time my first grade teacher called her in and said, "Did you know Julie's missed the last, 10, 20 Mondays?" And I still don't like Mondays. And so she tried to get me there more often. But a lot of times she'd pick me up for lunch and we'd go to the Riviera to the Windjammer. And I would get Jell-O and grilled cheese, and they had a tabletop jukebox, and I would play Age of Aquarius, and raindrops keep falling on my head. And then maybe I wouldn't even go back for the rest of the school day. Neil and I were 4 years apart in school, so we were never on the playground at the same time. We also weren't in junior high or high school together. I loved first through third grade. I had some really nice teachers. I was the kind of kid who basically had one friend at a time. Unfortunately, each time I made one, they moved away or something happened. Fifth grade, I had a teacher I also really liked, and it was the bicentennial for the United States. And we did all kinds of projects for the 200 years that we'd had our country, and lots of things were going on in the community and in the country for celebrating that. It was also the year that my mom found out that she had cancer. My teacher was Mr. Lehrman. It was kind of weird because he had a lot of anger, I think. I remember him throwing desks and yelling at students and disciplining a lot. But he was also my favorite teacher. He really helped me when I was a kid on the playground. When I found out about my mom's cancer, one of the kids said something really rude and I was crying, and he comforted me quite a bit about that. He also taught me math. I thought I couldn't learn by tutoring me during lunch, and he taught me to read directions. He had all these little things that he would do, like he'd write really long directions, and in the middle of it he might say, "Put your pencil down, do not answer any questions, and you will receive an A." And so I always read all the directions to see what kind of little thing he stuck in there. He taught me to stand tall, even if I had an answer that differed from the entire class, which one time I did. And I ended up having the right answer. I didn't always have the right answer, but that time I did, and it really taught me a big lesson. He was a chain smoker, and he really scared us about smoking. Told us he coughed up black stuff every morning and couldn't taste any food and all kinds of stuff. So he kind of talked to us like adults. I really liked that. Back then, junior high was 7th and 8th grade. For 7th grade, I went to a school called Toledo, which actually was a K through 7th. They were having their first year of 7th grade, and I went there and tried it out. And there was just 2 classes of junior hires instead of going to the big junior high. I met some good friends there and had some good experiences, but didn't really like it overall and wanted to go to the big junior high. So for 8th grade, I went to Hillcrest on Prospect, which is now Paris, and man, that was a whole new world, and mostly not in good ways. Kind of met a lot of friends and kids that were not the best to hang out with, and got into a lot of trouble. But I always was also teacher's pet and keeping my grades up and working and having jobs and all kinds of stuff. So it was just kind of all over the map. In 8th grade, my mom was sick with the effects of her cancer treatment, and also she had a sudden onset of rheumatoid arthritis. I was really sick with that. My dad also found out that he had fluid on his brain, and that was why he had been acting strange for many years, and he went in for brain surgery. Oddly, I was embarrassed about his brain surgery. He had a big scar on his head, and part of his head was shaved, and I don't know, there was probably just a stigma with having surgery on your skull. It actually wasn't brain surgery, it was head surgery. He had a shunt put in to drain the fluid, and then after that he became this really nice person that we had already grown some resentment against. So it was a weird time trying to get used to our new nice dad. I was usually wandering the Strand on my roller skates, often looking for people to party with, which wasn't hard at the time. I got a job at Seaside Lagoon the summer between 8th and 9th grade, and I worked there for 5 summers. I did a lot of babysitting in my neighborhood, and I preferred childcare to working in stores and things like that. I also worked a little in the Chemos law office, which belonged to my neighbors. And the law office job and the Seaside Lagoon job both of them started with picking up trash, which I was totally willing to do. And then those jobs quickly turned into much better jobs. At the law office, I even got to sit at the desk and fill in for the main office lady when she would go on vacation. And at Seaside Lagoon, I mostly ended up running the office and selling the tickets. The best part of 8th grade was meeting Auntie Kim when she started dating Uncle Neil. She was always so kind to me and let me hang out with her and her friends. I went to Redondo Union High School from 1980 to 1984, and I went to college from 1984 to 1989. So all of my high school and all of my college, Ronald Reagan was president. My favorite part of high school was the dances. I loved dancing to all the 80s songs, and I also enjoyed dressing up for dances, whether it was formal wear, red and white clothing, vintage clothing, or a costume. I had fun dressing up. I often helped decorate the gym for the dances as well. But after 7 years of illness from my mom, and at the end of my junior year, my mom died from her breast cancer. It was 2 weeks before finals, and I just didn't finish the year. I didn't go back. All of my teachers gave me my current grades, except for my chemistry teacher, which everyone thought was really mean of him to do. He had me take the final in the summer, in the middle of the summer. I was already not good at chemistry. And embarrassing to say, my coworkers at Seaside Lagoon helped me cheat enough to pass that final. I got a C in the class. This was my first C. At the time, I started going to a Bible study and then also to Branch of Hope, where I got rebaptized. My parents, for some reason, had me baptized at the Episcopal Church on Broadway in Redondo when I was a baby, even though we never ever went to church. I was learning a lot and growing in my faith, but I also had a foot or a foot and a half probably in the world. My senior year, I kind of just showed up and did the minimum work. I didn't do any sports, and I think I quit the service club as well. I had already applied for college, and it didn't really matter what you were doing your senior year. I enjoyed my government class with a teacher who was a Christian and taught us all a lot about life and politics and government. And I had a few close friends, but mostly was just out of it. I got mono that year, and I milked it for everything I could. And I was so happy to skip school for a month. At the end of my senior year, I won prom queen, which was fun, but also kind of surprising. I always think about my school years and just how kind of all over the map they were with prom queen, but depression and partying and good grades and teacher's pet, just kind of all over. Anyway, as for school, I did well, but I didn't enjoy most of it. I even looked into graduating earlier, but just couldn't maneuver that on my own without my mom's help. My mom wanted me to go to USC my whole life. She had wanted that because she went there, and so did her father, who even played football there. However, during my sophomore year in high school, I went to a weekend event at UCLA where we learned how to take tests better, and I just fell in love with the campus and became set on going to UCLA. As a matter of fact, I only applied to UCLA and had no backup schools. Well, when I got my rejection letter, I was crushed. 13 years of hard work I had put into going to college, and I was rejected. I sent an appeal letter to UCLA explaining why I got that C in chemistry. But of course, I didn't explain that I had cheated just to get the C. I was accepted into UCLA after I sent the appeals letter. I had a hard time navigating the whole thing with UCLA. The dorms were full, and the parking was full. For the first few weeks, I commuted to the campus in 405 traffic, which was terrible in the 80s, and I parked almost 2 miles from campus. And then there was, 30,000 students or something, and it was just kind of overwhelming, but I was doing it. And I got notified that there was an opening in the dorms a few weeks after school had started, so I moved on campus, which I was excited about. I got on the girls' floor. The whole dorm system was co-ed, except for one girls' floor and one boys' floor, in case the parents or something were just really against the co-ed dorms. My roommate's name was Julie, also. So when people called our phone and didn't know our last names, we would ask them, "Are you looking for brown Julie or blonde Julie?" She was Cuban, and her parents had escaped Cuba, and were strong Catholics and had really high expectations of her. And both of us, though, were kind of just going off the rails with partying and not doing great in school, although she ended up becoming a doctor. I met some good friends who had transferred from junior colleges and were my neighbors in the dorm. Unfortunately, I was really bad at keeping up with these good friends. My freshman year at UCLA was pretty chaotic. I struggled to get decent grades as I had never competed against such good students. I partied a ton trying to numb the pain of losing my mom. I skipped church. I would go home on the weekends to steal some cash from my dad that he kept under his mattress. My name was on his checking account also, and I would just randomly write checks when I wanted to. I really didn't treat him very well. It had something to do with my missing my mom, but I didn't know what. Well, I do know that I was mad that he didn't want to help me with my college expenses when my mom had been saying that she would try to help me. He suggested I go to El Camino, which I just wasn't willing to do. After my freshman year, he told me that he wasn't going to help anymore with my expenses, and I told him that I was going to quit if that was the case. He didn't want me to do that and found a way to help with a few things, and I found a way to pay for the rest. I was struggling in all kinds of ways my sophomore year at UCLA, so I did end up quitting, but I transferred to Cal State University, Long Beach. I felt much more comfortable there. The classes were smaller, and I had a chance to interact with my professors. At this time, I started going back to church and Bible study at St. Andrew's Presbyterian in Redondo Beach. I was doing better in my classes at Long Beach, and I became very involved at church. I taught Sunday school, started a monthly ministry at an orphanage in Cantamore, and ran the kids' youth group for 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. A friend at St. Andrews told me that serving others for Christ is the key to getting our eyes off ourselves. So I tried it, and it really worked. I was finally turning a corner in my life. Some of my closest friends were Paul Vigiano and Mick. We all were employed in the youth program at St. Andrews. I still had plenty to deal with in myself, but I was beginning to have the joy of the Lord. During my senior year at Long Beach, Mick and I started dating. Since we had been friends for some time, it was serious right off the bat. We dated for 4 months and had a 2-month engagement. I graduated in December, and we were married January 6, 1990. Mick had one more semester to go. He was at Cal State University, Dominguez Hills. We got married at St. Andrews. The whole thing cost about $5,000, most of which I paid for from my savings. My dad and Nani bought my fancy wedding dress. Granny and Papa paid for the flowers. We invited the whole church to come and had about 500 in attendance. We the service was beautiful, and the reception downstairs was simple and super fun. We had dancing and a slideshow. We cut the cake. We had the money dance. People brought lasagnas, and we also bought lasagnas and had salad. We had a ton of little kids at the reception, and somebody made little peanut butter and jelly heart-shaped sandwiches. And it was just how we wanted it all to be. We honeymooned in Cabo San Lucas for a week, thanks to Paul, who gave us $1,000 as a wedding gift. Mick and I were ready to start our life together, which started humbly in a converted garage in Old Torrance, and I couldn't have been more thankful for the life that we have had. More on that later. So this ends part 1 of my life.